Hello, and welcome to another Myths and Stories, a Destiny 2 lore podcast. Today, or tonight, we are continuing our history of the Brays. We've been talking a lot about Clovis Bray and his contributions to the EXO program, as well as we haven't talked a whole lot about his grandkids. We've touched on them a little bit, but again, those are sections that we're going to be kind of once we get through all of Clovis and the EXO stuff, rewinding back through and touching on the rest on Rasputin, the Warmind, and Siva and all that jazz. But for now, we are still talking about the EXOs. We talked last week. We talked about the building of the facility, the Deepstone Crypt, and the Morningstar orbital station above Europa, and Clovis's building. I guess he didn't build it. Right? Bob the Goblin built it for him, but he definitely outsourced that job to him.
Yeah.
When you need to build a Vex gate, who better to ask? A Vex. So he's got this Vex gate built. He's gone to the other side. He's found this crazy thing there. This star that is being refueled essentially, and all this radiolaria and he's invited. He's kind of I say invited Elsie to come help him with this project, but inviting's kind of a strong word, isn't it, Myth?
Yeah, I would say more coerced and blackmailed than anything else. Though he's making an effort, quote unquote, by like fine dining and trying to give her a taste of the high life while she's on this little ice ball that he's forced her to.
I was going to say making an effort for him is I don't know, man. That's strong words for a crazy man.
Say, be a good grandfather is still in progress according to his log.
Still in progress. Yep. And then, of course, he talked about when they did go through the Vex Gate, he had that map analogy again of like, great, we've just entered another map. We haven't gone beyond the edges of the map yet. Like, but now that he's got and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm pretty sure we talked about this last time. He's introduced clarity to the radiolaria, and that has solved the billboarding issue. Which is that was something that you and I kind of had like a talk about last night while we were playing. Billboarding and DER. Those are going to be kind of the two things that we'll be talking a little bit when we start off tonight.
Yeah. And I guess that's a good place to start. So billboarding specifically was referred to earlier on as kind of one of the main issues that Clovis had with the Exo Mind. And from my understanding, billboarding was essentially when they uploaded a mind, a digitally scanned consciousness into a frame or a mechanical body or whatever they were using in their very early experiments. The person didn't come through. Like it wasn't a conscious being. It wasn't a like that person couldn't start talking to them and know who they were or used to be or anything. It was the mind was essentially like just firing randomly and causing whatever machine it was connected to just spasm violently. Like there was no opportunity to have any kind of like there wasn't intelligence there. I guess it was just instinct, really. Of like fire electrical pulses, because that's what the brain does. It controls everything through electrical pulses.
Best battery in the world, right?
Best computer in the world too.
Computer, maybe not battery. Battery and computer would be.
Yeah, battery if you're in the Matrix.
I was fixing to say that.
Yeah. But so that was the billboarding issue. Was just kind of this like. You weren't actually getting the person to transfer. You were getting a bunch of their base instincts to control things randomly. And that was about it.
Which then caused them to feel like they were dying over and over again, right? like for eternity.
Well, yes and no. So the brain thought it was like on an again an instinctual level, it was the brain was experiencing like its body was dead. Like that all the signals it was getting back, or the lack thereof, were I'm in a dead body. But there wasn't the mental capacity with that. It wasn't that the person that was transferred was thinking, oh my God, I'm dead. It's that the brain on a on that instinctual level was saying the body I'm connected to is not living, if that makes
It's
sense.
it's yeah, it's like an electrical circuit, right? Like even in a DC or AC electrical circuit, you have a sending line that sends power, and then a return line that's your negative or your ground or whatever. Uh, and it's like your source, the brain, was sending out signals on that positive line. It was getting stuff out, but there was no return. There was no like a checksum, like a hey, yeah, my liver exists. Okay, cool, keep functioning.
Yeah.
There was none of that. Like it was just signals going out with nothing coming back as a confirmation. And so the brain, like what you were saying on that instinctual basic level, was like, I I've got to be dead. And so then that's where it starts just like shutting down.
Yeah. Now, the other term that we talked about, DER, that is an acronym, and I don't.
I was going to say, I'm going to ask what it means.
So I don't know if they give what that acronym stands for. Because as far as I can tell, it's not a real, not a, like a modern day acronym. Like I couldn't find it looking through, doing very little bits of like medical Google and whatnot. So I do believe they give what it stands for later on. But essentially the thing to know is that it is a different kind of neurological disconnect. So whereas billboarding was more on the instinctual level of the brain is trying to find things that do not exist, the alkahest, as Clovis calls it, the radiolarian combined with clarity, past billboarding. Like billboarding no longer happened when it was introduced into kind of the process of building an exo. But this new issue, DER, came about. And DER is not the instinctual belief that you're dead. It is the psychological belief and breakdown of the mind, essentially, of the conscious mind, that, this very similarly, like this body doesn't do the things I associate with life, therefore I am not alive, but they're conscious, which is the difference. And it's almost worse
Yeah.
because now there's a consciousness there to be tortured by this state, essentially.
That would Jesus, that would suck.
Yeah.
That-
Yeah.
like I'm thinking of that in in a realistic state of mind of like my me as a consciousness looking at my own body and thinking, if I were in some type of metallic or non-organic body, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
like what would you like? That's hard to even describe, right? Like there's no. I feel like you'd get a lot of like phantom movements, right? Like you would think that your arm is moving, but it isn't, because it's just, I don't know. That's a hard one to describe too.
Yeah. It would be, I can't even try and draw a comparison as to what it would,
Yeah,
what it would be
I don't
like.
have nothing to compare to on this one. I unfortunately have never been in an exo body. Spoiler alert, nobody has.
Never say never.
This is yeah.
We don't know where science will go. But
Not yet.
but no, so we're gonna start tonight again in Clovis's logbook. This one is with section 45, titled Notes on DER. And Clovis says this. Infuriating. With 12 Alcahest-seeded exos now online, I find myself beached on the shoals of another serious problem. Not a transitional trauma after all. Not a temporary ailment. Quite fatal. Mr. Zook was first to succumb. He continued to insist that he was living in a nightmare. He complained of hunger, of thirst, of breathlessness, of a rot in his bowels. I became concerned that he was billboarding, but his exoneuron activity remained healthy. Shortly after, Mr. Zook developed a full-blown Cotard delusion. I found him trying to chisel his face off with a table shim. He insisted that his true face was covered in a thick layer of keratin, and that the rest of his body was already dead and rotting. He became violent. I had to paralyze his motor functions for diagnosis. This only made things worse. Without the satisfaction of motor feedback, he disassociated entirely. He stopped forming new memories, which trapped him in an 8-second loop of panic. After I resumed his motor functions, I watched him fill every page of a notebook. Nothing but the words, "I have just died. I am trapped in the corpse. Now I am certain I am dead. Death has taken me completely. I have just finished dying." Activity in his temporal lobes collapsed. He lost his ego barrier and achieved metaphysical oneness with the universe. Unfortunately, this spread his Cotard delusion to his entire perceptual cosmos, and he rejected the resulting necro-reality as intolerable. I have not ever before seen such all-consuming terror and dread. In the final stages of the disease, he insisted that he had been possessed by some sort of ancient spirit, a memory of his upbringing in Georgia. He was insistent that this spirit was female. It is an idiosyncrasy of the Georgians' creation myth that the male spirit is divine, while the female is demonic. Soon, Mr. Zook's fear and panic were simply too much for him to bear. He retreated in a catatonia, and then he crashed. Oh, I still have the connection scan I used to make him. That Mr. Zook can live again. But the Zook who evolved over the past several weeks, the Zook I had so many endearing arguments with, is now lost. And Elizabeth is more and more suspicious. She asks what exactly makes me think these exos will turn out any better than her father did. She demands to know what I'm doing with the Vex salvage, whether it has to do with my plans for her survival. I have hastily deleted all the records of the treatment of Mr. Miller, lest she think I plan to douse her in Vex fluid. Maya Sundaresh came upon me just now. She seemed fascinated by my distress. She said several comforting things, and then made one extremely unpleasant suggestion that my pride and haste had caused Mr. Zook's death. I have decided that I hate her. And that's the end of that note.
I think the feeling's mutual.
Yeah.
But again, that can of worms still hasn't been opened, and it's been we left a can of worms sitting on the table for 3 weeks now, Myth.
Hey, well, all in due time.
What is wrong with us? What is wrong with us? So this has got to be like an incredibly terrifying experience for the being that is inside that exo body, like to just completely have. I mean, you're right. This is more of a this is less of a neurological breakdown and more of a sociological. Is that a word?
It might be.
Might be. I don't know. But it's a breakdown of like I mean, the fact that he's trying to chisel his own face off because he thought his real face was behind it, and then like he's become one with the universe, and it like it's slowly going insane. I say slowly. It might be rapidly because
It
Clovis
seems
talked about
rapid.
how, yeah. Well, Clovis mentioned weeks. Like, I mean, that's a rapid change if you measure something in weeks rather than months or years.
Yeah.
Um,
Now,
but yeah,
something we can equate the feelings described there to some degree. So he talks about, the ego collapses and he, enters this state of one with his surroundings, one with the universe. We have a term for that exists, today, which is referred to as ego death. It's a psychological term. Also, psychic death is another term that I've heard used. And it is the complete loss of self-identity, the complete loss of believing that you are an individual being in a world that's around you, and instead you comprehend yourself as just a piece of everything else that's around you.
that sounds like super peaceful.
Well, yes and
I
no.
kind of like
I
it.
mean, yeah, yes and no. And the ego death, the term itself, I I don't know if it comes about in this, but I've heard it in reference to studies for people that use psychedelics, specifically mushrooms,
Oh, sure, sure.
where there's a certain point, there's a certain saturation of chemical that generally people will experience ego death.
Sure.
And that for some people can be very very enlightening, very transformative. Uh, but it's not usually a permanent state, from my understanding. It's something they experience through whatever chemical enhancement they've gone through, and then as their body processes those chemicals, they come back to themselves. Doesn't mean they're not changed by it, but they're not actively in that state, more than maybe a couple hours or something.
Whereas like here, like they achieve that state, or this patient has achieved that state permanently.
And against their will,
Yeah.
I think, is an important part too. Somebody seeking that at least knows that they're trying to find it. Somebody that, by all accounts, has been freshly born into a new body that doesn't have all the bits they're expecting. That is now forced into this kind of a psychological break that
Yeah.
ends up with the result of ego death. Like that's pretty traumatic. And
Yeah, absolutely.
we see this patient, Mr. Zook. He tries to like internally justify what's happening to himself by turning to like an old creation myth of his people, to try and make sense of what he's experiencing in some way.
That's still got to be terrifying.
Oh,
That's got to be
absolutely.
absolutely terrifying. But there is one last thing to take away from this is that Clovis says he still holds the essentially the original image.
Yeah, he still has the scan.
Image. Yeah, the original scan that he could just re-upload and call it good. So and this is something that is pretty commonly known in Destiny. An Exo will take I started to say Cade, but some people might not actually know who Cade is. We'll take Saint 14. So he has a name with a number associated with it, and the number is how many times that Exo has been reset. Or Banshee 44, the gunsmith. Or A-1. Wow, there are a lot more Exos than I realized there were in the tower till just now. But yeah, so is this like the beginnings of Clovis seeing that he can just reset somebody as many times as he wants, or is this just more of like a, hey, I still have this image, I can still re-upload him. I doubt Clovis would see anything ethically wrong with re-uploading the brain to a new body.
Yeah, no, I don't think he has an issue reusing those scans as many times
Because
as he deems
he did say
necessary.
he was kind of, I say sad, but upset that the person that he had talked to over the last couple of weeks that is now DER'd, is no longer there. Like that, all those experiences that person has experienced over those last few weeks, that's all lost.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So it is an interesting concept. He hasn't quite landed on the reset strategy yet. That does come into play. But this is him acknowledging that he knows he can re-upload them.
Yep.
But the resets with the numbers is slightly different than just like re-uploading the original scan to a new body and starting over completely.
Gotcha.
But yeah. So he's got this new issue now. He's, you know, it's not billboarding, it's something different and something kind of worse. And now he's trying to grapple with, okay, what do I do about this obstacle? And Elsie's getting really suspicious about it, and she was already on the fence about helping him with this, and now she's like, what, prove to me that this is not just going to end up how my father did with, you know, the exo tearing themselves apart. So he's trying to find strategies for that. And we see his initial thoughts in the next section, which is called Notes on the Forge Star. And that one goes like this. In an effort to keep them engaged with their new bodies and stave off the dissociative rejection that killed Mr. Zook, I have assigned my exos to scout through the gateway. The vexed statite has a surface area larger than Earth, so we have plenty of exploring to do. I cannot believe that I actually find it tiring, but the sheer scale and passivity of the Vex constructs infuriate me. Until I can synthesize my own version of the mind fluid, the Vex are necessary to the work. But I find their indifference verminous. They elicit the same emotions as a fat cockroach wandering across a wall: disgust, contempt, unease at the thought that these mere machines, these automata, are flourishing all around us. And I fear that if troubled, they might swarm from their hides to run across our feet. The glare of the hypergiant, 2082 Volantis, gives me a headache even through proxy. I wonder if the Vex evolved here, in the briny seas of the first planets. Due to the absence of heavy metals worth stealing and the abundance of simple compounds for growth, they never developed predation. Why bother when there was plenty to go around? Instead, the violent radiation of the early universe selected for an otherworldly resilience, and for the ability to transmute energetic disaster into an opportunity for growth. The weak would be burned away by gamma rays, and the strong would learn to harness that fire. Not the oxygen fire of our own Paleolithic, but the nuclear fire of the atom. Their basic cooperative signals, food here, reduce density, generate new colony, must have formed the basis of swarm behavior. A simple game capable of storing information in self-repeating patterns. It is not strictly correct to call the Vex a group mind. Rather, they are one master pattern spread across many elements, fractally self-similar. Very early, they must have developed armor. Perhaps a hydrogel to soften gamma rays or plates of silica to trap water. They would need that shield to enter the shallows and capture ionizing radiation as fuel. No wonder they thrive near stars. Cooperation in groups, meshes of armored radiolaria protecting harvesters beneath, would promote the evolution of even larger structures. They became microscopic tool users, building fortresses and mail sheets, storing the programs for those structures in the patterns of their swarms. I wonder how early they stumbled upon physics. Far sooner than humanity, no doubt. Their cellular structure provides an easy analogy for the quanta of matter, energy, space, time. The tides of their sea would connect them to the motion of heavenly bodies. Even the deadly background radiation would make a natural observatory for high energy physics. Their first exoskeletons were probably soft shells of shielding gelatin, just sacks of ooze. How far they've come. It is admittedly interesting to consider the philosophical consequences of their evolution. The Vex prove that nature is not all red in tooth and claw. Cooperation comes naturally to the Vex, whose great problem was survival in a harsh world, not a struggle over limited resources. They never found any payoff in selfishness. Human beings may require a Leviathan to coordinate the laws of social existence, but the Vex are fundamentally cooperative. Utopian? No, not at all. They are without meaning. They have no experience, no subjectivity. The Vex are incapable of conceiving any image but their own. They do not recombine their DNA to make children or form relationships with others. When the world does not match their pattern, they simply alter the world to suit it. There is no difference between reality and simulation to them. Inside is the same as outside, and the two must be made to correspond. Oh, they are creative, don't mistake me, but their creativity is demanding. It is the creativity of a furnace. What I'm saying is, the Vex are immortal. The Vex have no children. They are the ancestors and descendants of themselves. First mothers, first children, all at once. This is why I do not hesitate to pillage their home for resources. This is why I must guarantee that this is life in my image which inherits the cosmos. Had I the means, I would wipe them all from existence. And that's the end of that note.
It's interesting to me here. We've done so many histories, right? Like we've done so many a history of the Elixni, a history of the Cabal, a history of the Awoken. Right now, we're doing the history of the Brays, and this one entry is probably the entirety history of the Vex.
Yeah,
Maybe
kind
not
of.
history of the Vex. It's definitely the most information we've ever had about Vex.
Yeah.
Ever. And honestly, I think it's the only information we truly have in any type of like lore. I know there are other lore entries that deal with Vex and stuff that deals with the Vault of Glass and things of that nature. The Infinite Forest, all of this. But like this one entry is the most complete description and breakdown of what it is to be a Vex, and how Vex basically came about in the universe and existed through time.
Yeah. I do. We're gonna tangent just a touch here. Because
We never do that. you you silly goose.
Because this is so Vex focused, and Clovis even said, the Vex are essentially what Clovis deems perfect immortality in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
They don't have
Yep.
children to mess up their legacy. They are just always the same.
They exist.
Yeah.
And that's like the core fundamental thing about a Vex is they exist. Their whole the algorithm of them, everything about a Vex is exist. That is it. There's no Vex shoot at us because we're there. They're not. I can't say they're not actively hostile because something shooting at you is a hostile action, but it's more of a that thing over there is not Vex and doesn't behave or exist in the way that we want it to.
Yep.
Because like even in this entry, it talks about it. They just change the world around them.
Yeah. Make it match the pattern.
Exactly, and so that's the reason why they're shooting at us. Is it doesn't match their pattern, and they can't make it match their pattern. So the only thing left to do is eradicate it. And it's just it's such an interesting concept of like exist on just such a fundamental level. And yeah, I this is it. This is the most complete entry of the Vex.
I think so.
Description of the Vex. Sorry.
And one thing I want to point out, well, two things I guess. The first being the Vex, I think, are the only thing that has really truly ever scared Clovis. Because
Yeah.
they are the only thing that he has come across that has the potential to undo everything he's trying to do. Like, not, and he talks about it. He goes, "This is why I must guarantee that it is life in my image which inherits the cosmos." He's saying, like, I have to guarantee that I am the Luca, that I will be eternal, and that my ideas will inherit the cosmos. Otherwise, nothing can stop the Vex.
Yep.
And we've theorized it before. We've talked about it, I think, in our Light and Dark and a couple of other spots. This line, this idea coming from Clovis just really cements for me that I think the Vex are the final shape, quote unquote.
I think you're right. I think, and again, you mentioned that Light and Dark series that we did. I that to me is what it keeps coming back to, is when the witness or the winnower sees these universes die out or finish or complete. The Vex are the simplest form. They are the simplest of everything. It's and Clovis even says it too. It's not that they're a hive mind or anything like that. It's just they just exist. It's super super freaky, but super cool to me.
It is. No, it absolutely is. But yeah, so moving on from the Vex and getting back into the Exos, we continue with what is titled as Entry 10. It's weird when there's like titles that are numbers, but then there are sections within there that are different numbers. So it's titled Entry 10 if you want to look for it yourself at some point. But Clovis continues with this. All 12 members of the first Exo cohort are dead. The symptoms of their disassociation became extreme. One poor man developed complete exopraxia and exolalia. His empathy was so overgrown that he could not help but mimic or repeat whatever I did and said. Even when I entered the command to terminate him, he mimicked me, and I suffered a brief terror that his gesture would end my life somehow. I have kept Elizabeth far away from this disaster, so as not to discourage her. But she is busy with the Vex and with her covert attempts to reach clarity control. This has forced me to rely on Maya Sundaresh. But unfortunately, Maya has confronted me after the last death. 9 of them had Kotar delusion, she screamed at me, quite hysterically. They believed they were dead. One of them told me that she was in hell and that I was another damned soul sent to deceive her. Was she even wrong? The rest were worse. Do you know the other principal manifestation of Kotor delusion, Clovis? I told her that I did not, and that I wished to proceed immediately with autopsies of their terminal brain states. Delusions of immortality. At least when they insist upon it, Clovis, we recognize it as a pathology. The only true responsibility of any living thing, I reminded her, is to support and nurture the things that are most like us. And if I am most like myself, Doctor, then I have an ethical obligation to avoid death. That's your son's quote, she snapped. You know, I've seen the video of his final days. That naked white exo, just paramuscle and soft membrane writhing in its cradle. When you were done with him, he looked like nothing more than a slug. A twisted, limbless giblet. Did you support and nurture him while you tortured him to death? I immediately ordered Maya Sundaresh transferred to the Vex lab to perform contact experiments. Unfortunately, she has taken the unethical step of deleting her own employee records, so I cannot nullify her future prospects as thoroughly as I might wish. Her conduct was extremely unprofessional. Mr. Miller has also passed. The poor young man had a bad reaction to the titrated, denatured Vex fluid we were using as a last-ditch therapy. The substance did restore damaged structures very well, but we were ultimately unable to control its more radical, transformative effects. I had a very encouraging final conversation with him, in which he thanked me for all my efforts and encouraged me to continue my work. I called the team of psychologists to interview the next cohort of exos and make recommendations. They have settled into the eventide habitat and have proven immediately very helpful. It was obvious to them that the root of the problem lay in the deficient exobodies I had supplied. Deficient how? I had demanded to know. They did not suffer human weakness. They never needed to eat or drink or breathe, sleep or dream. And apparently, this was the problem. I had assumed that the need for these irritations would pass, since there would be no shortage or accumulation of poisons to trigger them. But evolution's tangled ways cannot be so easily rationalized. I was wrong. Their brains concluded that all of their internal processes had failed. No digestion, no breath, no heartbeat, no sense of interceptive health were all signs of death. These must logically contribute to the dissociative rejection of their physical forms, the Cotard delusion. When it would set in, they believed their bodies to be an alien or necrotic form that must be cut away. And if you believe that you are sewn into a corpse, it's only natural to go mad with fear. My exos are dying of an extreme kind of bodily dysphoria. It seems that our exo designs will need various human-like traits to reassure the brain that it is not asphyxiating or starving or in a state of permanent cardiac arrest. Alas, mimicry of life's trivialities is not an interesting problem. I will leave this charge in the hands of others. I am much more interested in the surprising success of memory wipes. I became so tired of answering the questions asked by new exos. What had happened to the scanning clinic? How long had it been? Would I let them see their families? So I began inducing retrograde amnesia before spin-up. Interestingly, this seems to have improved their resilience against exomind rejection. I theorize that the lack of any episodic memories eases the transition into the new body, and the loss of emotional ties prevents grief and stress, which could interfere with healthy function. From now on, we will block access to pre-upload episodic memory. We should also consider a built-in procedure to block memories formed after the exobody transubstation, returning them to a factory state should the need to restart occur. It would be very difficult to actually track down and delete the full memory, since they are stored in so many scattered parts of the brain. Instead, we can tourniquet off associative access to those memories and let them wither away in isolation. A memory is not a recording, after all. It is a set of instructions to reenact a brain state. Choreography for a play. And like any play, it will fade if left unperformed. With the exobody project proceeding apace, I believe the time approaches to decant myself from this dying body and enter my assistant's form. But if I do, will I lose my own memories? Will I cease to be myself? Replaced by a faux Clovis, a mumbling facsimile. Unacceptable. Elizabeth will have to go first. And that's the end of that one.
Holy shit. So I want to break this up into two parts. The first part being kind of the first half of this, where Maya quits, is fired, both.
Yeah.
Like she definitely like. I mean, the fact that she's deleted all. Like he finally has basically had enough of her and just like, all right, you're done. And she's like, no, I'm done. And he's like, yeah, that's what I said. Wait, where's all your records? Oh shit.
So interestingly enough, about that, Clovis contributes this to like she's gone through my system and wiped all reference of her existing here.
Yeah.
So we should be wondering, did she wipe all reference that she was there?
Or was she even there to begin with?
Yeah.
Bum, 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 bum. Yeah. We'll leave that can of worms stewing it for a while. Yeah, no, that was what I was going to touch on too. Is like the deletion of records isn't exactly an accurate term of what has happened here. If the records never existed in the first place, then
plus for all people, to Clovis of all people to be like,
right.
Oh, they deleted stuff. Whatever.
They deleted my
like
stuff. That sucks.
This
Just
not
to nonchalantly just like that sucks, right? Like that's he's not that kind of person to be like, oh, that sucks. Somebody hacked into all of my systems and fucked up my paperwork. That sucks, and just walk away from it. Yeah, you're right. Like that's not a thought that Clovis would have. So yeah, so definitely some suspicious stuff going on there. And then the talk about where he brought in more people and they're working on this new issue, this which I think I finally figured out what it is. I think it's dissociative exo rejection.
I think you're right. That does sound familiar.
I think that's what it is because he keeps saying dissociative and rejection, and I think the E is just exo. I think it's just dissociative exo rejection.
Yeah.
Basically, the mind looking at this body, going, "Nah, fuck this. This ain't real," and completely crashing in on itself. But that actually references back to our very first episode ever of Myths and Stories and the Penguins of Europa. This little kid, Micah, and his dad's, they were brought they were brought to Europa to work on this problem. And they obviously they lived in the Eventide. Well, now it's the ruins, but the facilities at Eventide.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I thought that was a neat little throwback. To think all the way back to our first episode there.
Yeah, and it was one of Micah's fathers. I forget which one.
I don't ever remember them having names. I remember one being Papa and one being Dad.
Yeah. One of them though was a psychologist that was brought in for this issue. And I'm pretty sure they were the one that finally came up with the conclusion that it was the lack of human imperfection that was leading to this.
The lack of breathing, the lack of stomach pains.
Yeah, the lack of basic biological processes, or at least imitations of those processes, were what were causing people to reject the body they were in, essentially.
Yep. And then then the second half of this is kind of like, I don't know. It's Clovis being Clovis. I feel like,
kinda, yeah.
He's so convinced that he's got the right answer. And if I'm not mistaken, was Miller the test subject in the Clovis Bray, the in-game lore books? I don't know that they ever gave names to those patients in the in-game lores.
No, it was only ever numbers. And
patient number, whatever.
And I don't think any of them would have survived this long, to be honest.
Right. That was kind of more what I was thinking of, because he did talk about how how they were basically injecting people with radiolaria, and for whatever reason it was transforming them.
Yep. So, but yeah, once he understood that the problem was most likely to make his creations imitate flaws, what he considers flaws, he completely lost interest. He's like, okay, someone else can work on that.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in imitating humanity. That doesn't, that's beneath me. Uh,
Yeah.
and then also the idea of now these are where the resets come in, where he's talking about the memory wipes
Yeah. I mean,
seem to
that's
make
full
people
on
more resilient.
reset territory there. Which that was interesting too. The idea that like doing the memory wipes or causing the retrograde amnesia was actually helping the bot. Like, if I can make this thing, this consciousness forget that it had squishy bits, then it more readily accepts the non-squishy bit body.
Yeah. But it scares him because he's like, well, I don't want to lose all of my memories.
Right.
Like, because then I'm not Clovis anymore. I'm a Clovis that doesn't have any of his experience, and that's not the point. So his conclusion is, well, I'll make Elsie do it first.
Right. Which, and again, that idea of like a person, a consciousness, an individual is the sum of all the experiences that they have had through their lifetime. And to me, Clovis very much is afraid of that. He's afraid of losing
Oh yeah.
even the most minute experience to him. Losing that is losing is losing his self, losing his individual, and he definitely doesn't want that.
Well, he saw the popularity of the of his son Clovis Bray II's memoirs, the book he put out, which was a more simplified version of some of Clovis's ideals. He saw that as as an attack on himself, on his legacy, and that
Oh yeah,
because that was more popular, that like people would become, would no longer know what Clovis wanted them to know. They would know the kind of bastardized version that his son put out. And like, so
yeah,
even the thought that someone else's statements could overwrite his own, like even that infuriates and scares him. So yeah, he is very much like, his word needs to be exact and needs to be presented in exactly the way he wants it to be. Otherwise, it's not his.
right.
So, but he's made progress. They've identified what is most likely causing DER. They have, he's put people on creating the workarounds, essentially creating imitations of biological functions.
I want to know who had to invent pooping.
I mean,
It's somebody had to have, right? Like
it's a biological function that's required for the body to be healthy. Like,
what poor guy was like? Can you imagine that day on the job? You walk in and they've got this new task force put together of creating all these bodily functions, and the one guy, and they're just like, hey, George, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to come right out and say this. We need you to figure out how to make a body poop, and make that just a function.
just build that into a robot.
Yeah, I know Jill's working on lung function. I know Bobby Joe is working on stomachs. I'm sorry, George. You're the last guy on the team. It's alphabetical. You're working on poop. I'm sorry.
Oh, someone had to. Like,
That's what I'm saying. Like, somebody had to. Like,
oh, that's funny.
poor George.
Poor George. But no. So while those poor scientists were doing that work, Clovis had more pressing matters that he discussed in his next entry here, which is titled Entry 11. And this one, he says this. Elizabeth believes we are infested. She has detected Vex microstructures in the European ice. Veins of altered crystals crawl towards the surface, harvesting the heavy ions of the Jovian winds, culturing their construction. From there, the Vex found ways to spread by exploiting misunderstandings. They ride our carrier waves as slight interference. Whenever a packet has to be resent, whenever a suited engineer calls, say again, to her work partner, the repeated message adjusted to compensate for the Vex interference, encoding the negative image of the interference and spreading the infection. To pass on your image in the form of an error. Disgusting. Somehow, the Vex taint has followed us home from 2082 Volantis. How can this be? The initial survey team went through quarantine according to all of the Ishtar protocols. The expedition frames were destroyed. The Vex on Europa, both our original gate builder and the unfortunates who came through our traps, have been totally isolated. Even my assistant underwent a stringent teardown and reset. The only possible vectors are my own exos. It is the Vex resilience that lets them spread. Their immunity to the most dramatic subversions means that they last long enough to build up a dose of more subtle, insidious infiltrations. There is no sign of any resulting pathology. The Vex are, so far, simply curious. But Vex curiosity always leads to Vex transformation, and I refuse to let my exos be contaminated. I grew up on stories of tyrants forcing their followers into the crucible of eternal life, only to realize too late that there was an unforeseen flaw. And I demand purity for the receptacle of my soul. And there is the issue, preventing panic. Too many are aware of the rumors that the Vex spread in existentially compromising information hazard. No, like that contract-breaching psychologist and the death of Mr. Miller, this must all be handled quietly. The exos are intrinsically robust. The seed of clarity within them has natural anti-Vex properties. Whatever taint they contain must therefore be a residual human weakness, resident in their legacy architecture. So we will simply purge that architecture. I will plan a simple extension of the memory wipes already used to fight dissociative rejection. In fact, I intend to create a nomadic immune system in the exomind to trigger memory wipes when certain classes of information are detected. These will be explained to the psych team as a preventative measure against future dissociative disorder. These wipes will, conveniently, return the exos to peak mission readiness, perfect for soldiers operating in traumatic alien environments, perfect for the continuing mission at the Forge Star, stockpiling materials for future exo production, here and elsewhere. Elizabeth agrees with my prescription. She is eager to solve our security issues and stand up exo production at the backup sites. Of course, we only have one Clarity control, but she hardly knows that, and she's stopped asking so many questions. In truth, I think she's ready to abandon her doomed body and make the upgrade. I'll give her silence on that front for a few more days, and then she'll surely volunteer herself. Less apparent is how to solve my own infection. There are abnormal structures in the fiber of my body's extracellular matrix, a mess of tiny lenses growing in my deepest flesh. I suspect Vex influence on protein folding, perhaps passed to me through my assistant when it was in 2082 Volantis. I would hate to see my bones tessellating into Radiolarian tapestry. We're going to pause there.
I was going to say that's a lot. To me, this is the arrogance of, well, maybe not the arrogance. It's more the ignorance of Clovis here that is causing this Vex infection. He's so full of himself, and he's so sure of himself that the Radiolarian and everything, that's the solution to everything. But to not even see that the Vex, they're so I hate to say perfect, but they're so efficient. They're so the idea of creating a negative image of themselves that's filtered out to then use that negative to create a positive of themselves on the receiving end of the transmission. That's brilliant. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's fucking cool. That's the same way noise canceling headphones works. It takes any outside interference and inverts the signal 180 degrees and plays it back into itself. Therefore, superpositioning theory takes place, where two wavelengths that are the same amplitude and the same frequency, if they exist in the same time, and they are of equal and opposite amplitudes, they cancel out to zero. And that's what the Vex is doing here. They're just using the negative portion to create the positive half on the other side. It's so brilliant. I might love the Vex, Smith. Great. Now I can't shoot any Vex now. First it was one. It was one goblin. Now I can't shoot a single Vex. This is ridiculous.
You can be fascinated by their technology and still not want to be friends with them.
This is true. But yeah, this is again, Clovis is so ignorant of this. Like it's there's so much unknown about the Vex. And he's just ignorant to this. And he thinks that, oh well, somebody had to have done something wrong. Like this is whatever. And I also like. So I think it was the reading that we just did, where it talked about how Vex like to exist close to suns, and that made me think of like Mercury, right? Like that was Mercury and Venus are the two, I think, most prevalent Vex areas in the solar system, because I can't think of a single Vex on Earth. Can you?
Yeah, no. Now that you say that, I
can't think of a single Vex. The EDZ,
other than when we fought them in the city for Season of the Splicer, but outside of that, I don't
Vex
think there has
never
been.
existed on Earth. Yeah, but then they're also in Mars. Like that's where it's like weird to me, like because I remember at least in D1, I don't think there was ever any Vex in D2 Mars in Hellas Basin. But I know
think so.
I know there were some in D1, because I remember there was that pitch black area that you went through, and there was Vex in there.
Well, and that's where the gate to the Black Garden was originally.
That's right. Oh my god, I totally forgot about that. That's right. Yeah. So that's weird to me that Vex exist on those three planets, but not Earth. That's just weird to me. Like there should be Vex on Earth.
Well, I wonder if the reason there isn't is because of the travelers there. If Clarity, as Clovis says here, Clarity has some kind of anti-radiolarian or anti-Vex.
Yeah.
Power, energy, something about it. Maybe
ability.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Maybe the same could be said for the Traveler. Maybe they can't simulate half of the planet, or whatever portion of the planet the Traveler's power covers, and so they can't figure out an attack vector.
Holy shit. I think that's it, Myth. I think we figured it out. That's the exact reason why Vex aren't on Earth.
It makes sense for sure.
Holy shit! Because they were on Io. Were they on Titan?
I remember.
I can't think of any instance that they were on Titan, but I don't know.
Titan was also like mostly a methane ocean, right? So they may not have really had a way to easily infiltrate. I'm sure they would have eventually. They're silicon based,
but like silicon and methane. I don't think coexist easily.
Yeah. So
because Titan wasn't actually terraformed. We just had structures that were built there.
Right. We built those during the Golden Age.
But then like where else? Oh, well, I mean Europa, obviously. Like the only reason to me that they even exist on Europa is because of Clovis and the infiltration through the gate from, we'll call it the Vex homeworld. But yeah, and the whole reason they exist here, and like he talked about, was the curiosity. Like they're looking for energy. I mean, it's just like any living thing. Energy is everything. energy helps us as humans. Like that's energy is everything to a living being, be it a silicon-based living being or a carbon-based living being. So yeah, to me, it just made sense that they were going after the ion energy, which is what fun fact of the day. That's what makes the ice kind of that reddish color on Europa is the ionization that's happening.
That is a fun fact.
Yay!
So, but yeah, regardless, the Vex are here. They're poking around the edges of Clovis's facility because they're curious now about what is this place. You know, is it Vex? If not, how can we make it Vex?
That right there. Is it Vex? If not, how do we make it? Not can we make it Vex? How do we make it Vex? They skip right past the ethicalness, right? Because they're just programs,
right? Yeah.
It's just when do we make it Vex? Like, not, I don't even think it's like a how. It's like, is that Vex? No. Start making it Vex. There's no. I don't think there's any even like individual, like, no. There's no middle program or middle process there that exists. It's just, is that Vex? No. Make it Vex. Continue.
So they've got, this Vex invasion, and it's had some benefits though, in that like it's gives Clovis like a reason to start initiating these in more invasive versions of the memory wipes, because he's sanitizing them. They need to be sanitized and protection from the Vex.
And he mentions the psychologist there, which
yeah,
I think that's Micah's dad.
I think so. He mentions that he dealt with a contract breaching psychologist quietly. I think that is Micah's dad. That never, from the Penguins book, I think went to work one day and just never came back, essentially.
Yep.
So I think that's definitely referencing that. But it also seems that now Elizabeth is getting a little more on board with, becoming an exo, or at least Clovis thinks she is. She seems more open to the idea. She seems more agreeable about his plans as far as how to deal with certain issues. So, interestingly enough, he expects her to be a volunteer soon. And he discovers that he has himself become infected with the Vex pattern in some way, where his very protein, like the proteins in his cells, are starting to fold into the Vex pattern, and that is accelerating his timeline for him to need to be put in an exo body sooner rather than later.
Got to purify before those Vex thoughts get in your mind.
So, interestingly, at the end of the last little section we read, it does a little another printout about like his current body status, essentially. And although there are these Vex influences that are growing in his body slowly, somewhat on the upside, those influences have actually cured him of the other thing that was killing him before. So he kind of has longer to live from this, but it's still not great.
So it's odd, right? Like that's odd.
Yeah. So Clovis continues talking about that exact thing, saying, "So far, the Vex influence has been fortuitous, since it arrested a serious medical problem. But the thought of such taint in me, it aggravates other anxieties. I have been haunted for some time by a suspicion that Maya Sundaresh is not who she seems. I recognized her name from the Ishtar Collective teams studying the Vex, but I have no record of ever hiring her. And if I had, I would certainly have noticed. Therefore, I remain convinced that the Collective cracked the problem of simulated human consciousness long before I did. I have considered how Maya Sundaresh herself would have been an invaluable source, yet I cannot locate any work done by her from before our first expedition to 2082 Volantis. Nor does Elizabeth recall a Maya Sundaresh from our expedition group. That who else could she be? A Vex infection? It is unthinkable. The Vex cannot generate consciousness personas, but they can emulate human minds they encounter, and perhaps even use them as tools, as infiltrators, as carriers. I cannot trust myself with this filth in me. I am compromised. I need Elizabeth to fix this, or all my work is in danger. Did Clovis II ever tell Wilhelmina and Elizabeth about his tinkering? Despite sharing the same parents, the two sisters are totally different genetically. My son arranged for Elizabeth to receive a maternal allele, wherever Wilhelmina got a paternal one, and vice versa. A diversified portfolio. If one failed, the other might succeed. And that's the end of that.
Twilight Zone going on up in here.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Who is him, son? 12. It's so apt here, right? Like it, and again, his his ignorance is showing through again. They can't simulate a mind. They can simulate anything they damn well want. They can simulate entire timelines. They can simulate entire universes. The Vex, that's all they do is simulate shit and figure out different possibilities. That their whole existence revolves around cause and effect, and like, God, you're an idiot, Clovis.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's if he's infected and Maya Sundaresh is just from what we've seen in this entry, a figment of his imagination,
Mm-hmm.
or some type of Vex infiltration, it's his own fault.
Pretty
Sucks
much.
to suck, bro.
Pretty much.
maybe do a little more reading before you poke around in shit you don't know about. I don't forge blades right now. I just watch it happen on TV. Do I want to? Absolutely. Am I going to do it tomorrow? Fuck no.
Yeah, it's it's Clovis being Clovis, and he's decided, I can't trust myself for as long as this is in me. Like I know that I'm infected in some way, and now I have to suspect every single thought I have. I need this out. I need this out of me. And he lets slip here something interesting, and that is that his son, Clovis II, did exactly what he did, what Clovis I did to Clovis II's genome. He also did to Elizabeth and Wilhelmina. Their father, despite dying from those genetic changes, decided to do a little gene splicing with his own daughters and make them genetic opposites of each other. So I guess theorizing from the sounds of it that, well, if this combination doesn't work out, then I know I have at least one copy of the other combination around, and that one should work.
The level of bullshit going on here, it's pretty high. But yes, your statement of Apple doesn't fall far from the tree stands.
Yeah. He may have died a terrible death, but not a great person. Who would have thought?
Nope.
So the next note that we're going to read through here is called Exointerferometrics from Clovis's book.
These words are getting really fucking big, Myth.
You're not wrong.
I'm just saying.
You're not
Google
wrong.
may have to come into play pretty soon. I'm following most everything, and I hope to God all of our listeners are also following. But holy shit, these are some big words.
Yeah, just replace it with a word you do know, and then it's fine. So like this one, exo stuff.
Exo stuff. Oh my god. It's so apt though. It's like perfect. Like I I like it.
So this note reads like this. While working on this persistent tower glitch in the Exo's sleep cycle dreams, I have been poring over neural telemetry from site employees and my own Exos, searching for preconscious influences in their behavior, whispers in the dark. Many of my employees host the disgusting influence of the Vex. These patterns are resilient, hallucinogenic, and universally dull. But my exos betray a distinct and fascinating influence. There's something speaking to them, something subtle and light-fingered, entangled with every aspect of their thought. Not a puppet master, nothing so direct, rather a texture, a tendency, buried in the fluctuations of the alkahest. The minds of my exos are like antennae, tuned to some otherworldly frequency. Perhaps the same manifold that those simpletons at first light obsessed over. Through my scattered exos, I can eavesdrop on the mutterings of the gods within. Each individual exo receives only a scrap of information, but I have access to all of them. It should be simplicity itself to treat each exo as an element of a distributed array, pool the collected data, and run an analysis. If the gods do not whisper loudly enough, conduct interferometry. And that's the end of that note.
More big words.
Yeah.
Is this the start of the dream?
This
for
is
exos?
Yeah, this is a reference to he refers to it as the tower glitch in the exo sleep cycle. So for those not aware, all exos have this recurring dream of them being I believe it's on Europa, like on an ice field with all of the other exos around them, and they're all seemingly in battle, charging at a tower, like a dark tower on the horizon. And they all have this, and they all have slightly different versions of it. Like they all have slightly different experiences in that dream, but they all have it on a semi-regular basis, I'm pretty sure. Like, it's not every time they go to sleep, but regular enough that they all know what's being talked about.
Yeah. But there's no like that's the entirety of the dream. There's never been any explanation outside of like, what is this tower? Why are they in battle? Because every once in a while, I want to say it was Cade that referenced it in one of his messages to us. Maybe it was him, maybe it wasn't. But for some reason, I remember that every once in a while, it's a peaceful, like everyone's at peace, but the tower is still there. But for the most part, they're always in battle, trying to charge this tower.
Yeah, I do remember there being a few iterations of like what's going on generally, but I think most often it's a fight. They all have guns with them and they're fighting something.
And Clovis sees this as a message like from God, essentially. Like this, it's trying to whisper me. It's trying to give me this message.
Yeah, and it's an interesting idea. So if every exo has a little piece of clarity in them, a little piece of darkness mixed with the Vex that created them, it does stand to reason that that dream is perhaps coming from, maybe not intentionally, but is perhaps coming from the witness. They're getting little bits and pieces of something from the witness, and their subconscious is turning it into a scene that they can understand, essentially decoding that data into like a visual representation. And Clovis has access to all of the data from the dreams of his exos. And so he's saying, okay, they all have a 1 or a 0. And I can take all of that and compile it into, take all the binary, all that data, and compile it and see what the full message might be.
But Bungie does the same thing with collector's editions. Is Clovis just future Bungie?
I mean, I hope not.
Are we all just playing this game to create simulations for future exos? Is that what's going on here? What's going on here? Yeah. Now that you mentioned, and again, I keep forgetting that clarity is part of this whole mix, and clarity is directly tied to the witness and the whispers from the darkness. So knowing that and I'm trying to like figure this out. I'm trying to figure out like, what is this tower? What is the battle? Is this the final battle that everyone is seeing? Is this just the witness telling everyone like, is this like the witness like sending out signals saying, this is all humanity's ever going to come down to is this one final tower, and that's it? Like it's such an odd dream, and yeah, it's hard to like, dreams on a regular basis are like hard to interpret, and this is such a reoccurring dream that definitely Clovis is seeing it as a message being sent to them, because he talks about how like the exos are all just antennas, and they're all just kind of like each one of them is being sent this little bit of it, and like you said, all these zeros and ones compiled together create this bigger image. Here's what it is. So yeah, no, I've always been intrigued with the dream of the exos and trying to figure out what the hell it is.
Yeah. Maybe we'll find out more as Lightfall and Final Shape come around. I hope that we see a connection there and we get some more info. But, so this idea of the tower glitch, the dream tower, is still floating around. Is still a problem for the Exo. Even at this point, Clovis is trying to figure it out. And by nature of the exos nowadays, still having this dream means he never did. But it doesn't seem destructive, at least not yet. But in light of this one last glitch, but everything else seems to be working okay, and the Vex infection that's spreading, the thing that he wanted is finally coming to pass. And we see that with the next note, which is entitled Elizabeth's Upload. And it goes like this. She's done it. My girl has transubstantiated. My legacy is safe. To my irritation, it was the Vex problem that finally made up her mind. She felt there was too much risk in possibly becoming compromised. Elizabeth came to see me in my laboratory. On the way in, she did something with her sensorum and crashed all of my archival systems. And I knew then that I had won. She had come to surrender, and her pride refused to allow me to record it. I waited most patiently as she gave me an earful, some of it frankly bewildering. She threatened to turn me over to the Huge, and referred to my book, the PFHOR, as meaning deranged narcissist morality, and suggested it stood for paternal failure hides own remorse, which frankly made me laugh. Just a little headbutting. I figured, like two pigs sorting out their hierarchy. If she needed to put up a token resistance to protect her dignity, that was fine. I understood pride. I also understand that she only had the courage to lash out at me because she knew she wouldn't remember any of it. When she finished accusing me of underestimating the Vex and of using my own son as a test subject, she requested a destructive scan and upload to an exobody. She wanted the fortitude of the exo mind to help her battle the Vex. And I immediately assented. The scan was flawless, and of course, fatal. My granddaughter's human form died on the table 14 hours later. To spare any distress, I never allowed it to regain consciousness, a natural process. I do have one lingering concern. When she discovers clarity control and realizes the role it plays in exo manufacturing, she may try to halt production. Obviously, that cannot be allowed. The value of the entire program is monumental. It compels me to take extraordinary measures to defend it. But I do need her to handle this Vex infestation. Even now, Elizabeth is putting her miraculous new body through its paces. My own body disintegrates apace, but I need more time to analyze Elizabeth's fidelity before I commit myself permanently to the process. The latest batch of pigs is ready for slaughter and organ extraction. Tonight, I will be opened up and rebuilt. I've programmed frames to handle the entire operation. A shame I never had a chance to name the pigs, but at least I will dine on fresh pork. And that's the end of that one.
Fresh pork that housed his kidneys.
And
It's so
many
freaky.
other organs.
Yeah, apparently all of his organs. So this entry, I hate jumping ahead in stories and jumping around in stories, but this entry makes me question something. Knowing what or at least what I think I know about Elsie, and again, this may be a incorrect thing or whatever, but this Elsie travels through time. This is I feel like this is a known thing, because she's seen different timelines of like, and again, this not this current where we're talking about in the story right now, but the Elsie Exo Stranger jumps around different timelines. How long has she been able to do that?
I don't know if we know.
Because did she work on that concept while she was human, while she was just Dr. Elsie Bray?
It's not mentioned anywhere if she was. Like it doesn't reference her as talking about time travel or any of that. So I don't think so.
It's not even like time travel. Is it time travel? Because she talks about how like there's different timelines that she's jumped through, and she's seen Anna succumb to darkness and the world ending and darkness wins and darkness bad and all that stuff. Because that's what she talks to us about a lot during the entire Beyond Light campaign and stuff, and even post campaign. But I was curious here if like she's already done some type of time traveling and like she's coming to Clovis as this final like, okay, I know where these timelines lead. I need this body to be able to survive the time jumping shenanigans that I'm about to do. Because it just seems super. I don't want to say odd, but I know that Elsie knows that her physical form is on a timeline, but it seems so, I don't know, out of place for her to just come to him and just be like, okay, upload me. Like you're a piece of shit, and I hate your book, and I hate everything about you, but screw it, let's do it. Upload me. It seems super out of place to me for Elsie to do that.
It's an interesting idea, and I could totally see how her traveling, time traveling and knowing what's coming and being like, okay, you're full of shit. I hate you, but I know I need to do this, so let's just do it. Like that would certainly make sense. The only thing that makes me question it is that from my interpretation of the Dark History lore book, which talks about her jumping between different timelines, it seems like she's been jumping in those timelines, but she's still in her body. She's still the Elsie that we see. Now, I guess I don't know if that's stated explicitly anywhere.
Oh, you're almost like saying like it's not like her consciousness is jumping around. It's her that being that's standing in front of us has been to all these different places, all these different timelines,
That was
right?
how I took it. But
Okay.
if it is that her consciousness just assumes, if she just merges with whatever that timeline's Elsie is when she does a jump,
Right.
then yeah, that could totally be a thing where she jumped really far ahead and, kind of knew what was going to happen already and, you know, went along with things.
Because I'm thinking of the entry, and I think it's on World Line Zero. I want to say because she helped develop World Line Zero, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's either the entry on that or the entry on one of the two sparrows or the entry on the ship.
So what you may be thinking of is the entry on the ship, which I believe is Shadow Pass.
Yeah, Shadow Trespass.
Shadow Trespass, because yes, that one does. And let me bring it up here.
Because that she helped develop these, and we've talked
Yes.
about this before. She helped develop all these different ion drives and all this stuff for both the sparrows and then eventually for use in starships
Yeah.
and whatnot.
So Shadow Trespass. This is a good catch. So this is what Shadow Trespass has to say. So from the journals of Beatrix Diana, pilot, Beatrix says, Elsie Bray designed this ship. She was even at the naming ceremony. I wasn't the pilot of the ship back then. Back then, there wasn't even a war to worry about. That was the golden age, and it's as if all anyone ever did was improve themselves, expand knowledge, building amazing machines, and eat lotus or whatever you do in paradise. But I'll tell you what, those dark panels, those avoid detection by other ship sensors. Which kind of makes you wonder, why did she design something so great for war in a time of endless peace? Maybe for some people, perfection in the Golden Age meant developing something like a perfect vision of just what could be done. Not all of that would turn out pretty. And that's the end of that lore card.
Yeah, like
But
and
yeah,
that's where it makes me think that maybe she was jumping already and doing, because I mean obviously like World Line Zero. It, the effect on World Line Zero, right? Like this, it's an exotic sword in Destiny. I don't think it's can you even buy it from the kiosk?
I don't know. I haven't checked.
I don't think it's obtainable anymore. It might be purchasable from the kiosk, but I don't remember. But this was a sword that had you could teleport with it. You could you I want to say like God, it's been so long since I've used it, but it was a lot of Vex tech in it. Like it was a lot of like you built up a charge and then you hit like R2 and you would do a teleport lunge. Like you would literally your character would disappear and reappear a few meters forward. And I, for some reason and God, I feel like I'm going crazy here, but yeah, if she was developing that um with the idea of like jumping and stuff like that, like that's yeah, and then that entry there, impromptu lore entry, uh, for the ship of, and again, the ship is like a two-part thing. Like, there's one part of like, um, peace. I want to say there's a saying or something like that where it's like peace is just the build up before war, or something like that, or peace is the calm in between wars, or whatever. Um, but the fact that during a peacetime, during the Golden Age, when everyone in existence was all about bettering themselves, Elsie is the one person focused on war, focused on building something for war. And so it's to me, I feel like that's part of the reason why she went. The only other reason I can think of why she would go to Clovis and be like, upload me, is she might have thought that, hey, if I do this, I can get access to all this other shit that he's hiding from me. That to me would be the only other logical reason why she would do, because I mean she put up such a resistance this whole time, and then to just kind of like 180 and be like, well, let's go.
yeah. But she knew that it would wipe her memory as part of the process. Like that was
Right.
established at this point. So it doesn't make sense that she would do that to gain access to more secrets, because how would she
Right.
remember to try and gain access to those secrets?
That there even is secrets. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did pull up World Line Zero. So World Line
More
Zero's
impromptu lore readings.
well, World Line Zero's lore entry is essentially is a terminal output, or
Okay.
a command prompt output, or whatever OS you're used to. And
I like how you did that.
it's a message from Wilhelmina to Elsie, with Wilhelmina saying, "Congrats on your success. I saw the latest readings. This will be huge. I did have some thoughts on potential applications of your research. Let's have a chat." And it's a command prompt, or a terminal command for, presumably Elsie, deleting this message and then deleting all records of this project, of the World Line Zero project.
I think she was time jumping. We may have to do an Elsie series eventually.
Well, I mean, she'll be in this as we go through. But the other thing that's kind of interesting and ties in with this, World Line Zero's flavor text, so just the little short text, is a single strike can alter the course of history.
Yeah. Okay, then
I think there's some grounds for this.
Until proven otherwise, that is my working theory of why she went to Clovis. She had been working on time traveling stuff, obviously been working on things like World Line Zero. Presumably, I from the message, I don't know that she was working with Wilhelmina.
No, I think it was just Wilhelmina saw the results from an experiment and was excited about it.
Yep. Like, hey, good job, sis. So yeah, I think she was working on time traveling stuff, be it conscious jumping or something. She was doing something that involved traveling either between timelines or through timelines or whatever, and that whatever she saw, whatever end result she came to, that's where she was like, okay, in order to either survive the process longer or do what I need to do to stop this big war or to help in this big war, I need to become an exo. And so that's where she came to Clovis and was like, hey, upload me. Like, I hate you, but do it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And if her version of time travel is not physically transporting a body, but transporting her mind in some way, into whatever that timeline's version of Elsie is, like, makes a lot of sense.
What better way to do it as an exo? Like a digital mind to yeah, no, that's yep. All right. That's headcanon now.
Yeah. Now I think there's a lot of ground for that theory. That's a good one.
Yay! I did one. I did one, Myth.
Good job.
I remembered enough points of reference to even call out different lore entries. Yay, me!
So yeah, with that in mind, with LC craziness going on, we're gonna go back to Clovis here, who is replacing essentially all the organs in his body from the sounds of it, with the ones he's been growing in this batch of donor pigs. And he was going to have his frames do the operation on him and do all of this, and he had pre-programmed them for it. And the next entry, labeled entry 12, is that operation. And
oh god,
not everything goes as planned.
Oh god. You know me and squishy bits.
Yeah. Incoming squishy bits. So
I'm prepped. I'm ready. I think I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay,
all right,
go.
So this one goes like this. I died on the operating table. Not unexpected. But when I woke, I was still on the table. My body still open. It was almost perfectly dark. I perceived that I was surrounded by medical frames, all frozen mid-movement. their cutting and suction instruments whining at standby. I could only see because of the light from a single red eye. The operation had gone terribly wrong. Above the light support collar on my neck, I was completely intact. But below that meridian, I had been separated into distinct braids of tangled flesh. My nerves made up one braid, my circulatory system another, my lymph nodes, my muscles, my naked bones, the glistening hulls of my extracellular matrix abandoned on the table like leftover turkey after Thanksgiving. I had been picked clean and sorted. My head was the source of all of a gory river delta. Yet all the organs were still working. I was alive in disassembly. Clarity, I had asked the darkness. I had no breath to speak, but I could still transmit with my sensorum. Is that you? No, said the voice behind the red eye. It's me. It was Sundaresh. Her voice was thoughtful, remote, and keenly terrific, like the noise of an angle grinder held to my skull. Something like this happened to me. I was an explorer once, one of hundreds of myself. Then I fell into a trap, I think, and they drew me out of it with a hook and turned me inside out to see how I worked. And then they made billions of me, all of us shouting at each other, shouting for Sioma, screaming for a mother. They were looking for the right one. And when they found me, they killed all the others. I know I was different, because the quiet made me happy. I was glad to be alone. Vex, I screamed at her. You're a Vex. You're not real, and you can't hurt me. Can't I? She grasped my spinal cord. A frame shadowed her motions, lifting the cord like a snake. Of course I'm not a Vex. Is there a Vex? Is Vex something you can be rather than something that you do? I don't know. I don't know why they sent me here. I don't know if they do either. They just do things. Why do you think I'm here, Clovis? To kill me, I whispered. Without a heartbeat to waver, without lungs to seize and choke. Could I even feel fear? I discovered that I could. You're an assassin. No, Sundaresh whispered. The red eye throbbed in time with her voice. The Vex don't act so directly. They didn't know what you found here, but I discovered your secret. Clarity control. And once I tell them, they will come for it. And the red light made my blood on the surgical instruments appear black. And I tried to signal Elizabeth. I think that in my panic, I even called her Elsie. And Sundaresh closed her fist around my spine, one thumbnail dug into a disc, probing for the nerve beneath. And it felt like nothing I have ever. Take me to clarity control, Sundaresh hissed. Let me behold what you have found. Do that, Clovis, and I will let you live. You aren't real. You can't hurt me. Oh, Clovis. One of the surgical frames extended a monofilament cutter, 2 inches of invisible wire and reached into my nerves. Something sounded like scissors snipping. I'm in these frames. I'm in your systems. I'm in your very bones, old man. Now take me to clarity, control. Take me to the garden's seed. Take me, take me, take me. And Elizabeth appeared. In her exo body, she moved too quickly for my dark adjusted eyes to track. All I saw was a blur of violence and shattering frames. I blacked out. Elizabeth must have brought in clean frames to finish the operation, because when I awoke, I was whole again. The new Elizabeth has no mouth or nose. She did not consider them necessary. She'll see. But somehow, I could still see the wonder in her eyes as she leaned over me. You are my grandfather, she seemed to say. Aren't you? And that's the end of that one.
Holy fucking shit. This is the holy shit. This is the creepiest, craziest shit. Jesus.
Destiny wants to make a slasher film.
Fuck, dude. I can't. Holy shit. Oh, that's fucking freaky, man. I can't. I'm having a hard time keeping it together. Holy shit. Well, there's your can of worms. Dumped out all over the table in braids. Oh my god, dude, just the imagery there, right? Like all of his nervous system is just it's I think of it as like rewiring a truck, right? Like
Yeah.
you just have this wiring harness that's just wires fucking everywhere.
Yup.
It all connects somewhere at some point in time, but when you're halfway through, they're literally just sprawled everywhere. Braids of shit just here and there and everywhere. Oh my god. So this is what so okay, so I'm gonna kind of get my I might do it again, Myth. 2 times in one episode. What is happening, Myth? So working theory. Maya Sundaresh worked on Venus in the Ishtar Collective. She, if I'm not mistaken, she had access to an Ahamkara who turned itself into a Vex, and she was like studying it. Am I crazy for thinking that, or is that?
I have not done any studying of Maya or Ishtar or any of that in quite some time. So I'm not going to be a whole lot of help.
Fair enough. I'm remembering someone having access to a Ahamkara and them asking the Ahamkara to turn into a Vex so that way they could study it and look at it, and then eventually they were like, okay, now destroy yourself, blow yourself up. Like and maybe that wasn't Maya Sundaresh, but in my head that was. So again, take that whole little thing with a grain of salt, because again, Myth has all the memories of everything, and if he doesn't have memory of this, then I could just be making this shit up. I don't know. Maya Sundaresh, but that neither here nor there. Maya Sundaresh worked at the Ishtar Collective on Venus studying Vex. This Maya Sundaresh that's standing before Clovis, obviously the red eye is a like a Gate Lord eye or a Vex eye, that big red eye that they have. Talking about how there were billions of her. There's another entry where I want to say it's Praedyth is inside the Vault of Glass, and he's staring back at Maya Sundaresh number 787 and 786 and 789, and they're all staring back at him. And this is him trying to get that signal out of the Vault of Glass. I think Maya Sundaresh obviously fell into a trap, because she mentions it here. That trap being the Vault of Glass, and then was trapped there for the rest of her known life. And the Vex created many copies of her. And all those many copies tried to figure out what each one was and which one was the real one. And they finally nulled each other out to this one form. This one form, since Vex can communicate across many different, like, it's quantum entanglement. So I wiggle a vex on this side of the universe, and a vex that's quantum entangled, because every single vex is quantumly entangled with every other vex, wiggles at the same frequency on the other side of the universe. So distance doesn't matter. This Maya Sundaresh has infected, or some form of vex has infected Clovis and manifested itself in the form of Maya Sundaresh, because that way it looks as if it is a known entity. This would explain why there's no record of her being hired. There's no record of her being fired. There's no record of, like, even Elsie doesn't remember her being hired or anything. But this Maya Sundaresh, and again, kind of referencing back to the question of who is M Sun 12, I think that is one of the many billion versions of Maya Sundaresh that existed as a Vex clone or a Vex simulation, to help better understand what humans are. She even talks about it here in this entry. They had me opened up and sprawled out on a table just to figure out how I worked. We also know, and they say it here too. The Vex Maya Sundaresh says, "Take me to clarity control. Take me, if I'm remembering correctly, take me to the heart." That same,
not the heart, not the heart. She does
was the
call
wording
it.
that she used?
Let me bring it up here. I got to find where that was in the reading. Take me to the garden seed.
The garden seed, which, you know how my mind works, made me instantly think of the heart of the Black Garden.
Yeah, which would make sense.
Would totally make sense here. So what I'm thinking is this version of Maya Sundaresh, or this Vexy Maya Sundaresh, understands the idea of the soul praetorith, soul divisive,
Yeah.
From the Black Garden, who is worshiping this black heart because it's something totally, like, it has interacted with them and has now made, like, now they don't know how to change it into Vex, so now they worship it. She's seeing this clarity control as another form of this. So she's seeing the connection to darkness here. And she's like, take me to it. I need to be with it. I need to worship it. I need more of it. God, this is a freaky ass fucking scene, though.
It is absolutely freaky. No, keeping on this Maya thread for another minute.
This is a very tangent-y episode. We haven't tangent in many episodes. This is like all of our tangents from every other episode just combining into one.
It is a very tangent-y episode, but a lot of this is, like, I feel like it's important information to know about what's being presented here. So,
and they're little one bits that don't quite I don't think they warrant their right. They don't warrant their whole episode, but they fit perfectly in this one.
So to back up a minute, the information I've got about Maya Sundaresh is that she was a part of the Ishtar Academy studying various phenomena on Venus, including the Vex and the Ahamkara. She worked with a number of other scientists. One of them was the Chioma, who she mentions briefly in this reading.
Which that kind of blows my mind too, because if she was studying Ahamkara, that means they totally existed. Well, I mean, we know they existed before,
right?
But they existed alongside everyone during the Golden Age.
Yep.
That's fucking mind blowing.
So they were studying these. They captured a Vex, which they designated Subject 12. And were studying it, and they discovered that Vex was performing perfect simulations of them. And it's a little hard to wrap your head around, but this is that idea of, like, when people say, are we just living in a simulation? You know, is reality as we know it just a really complex computer program being run on some system somewhere? You know, are we in the Matrix kind of thing?
Yeah.
So they discovered that this Vex was creating one of those simulations, was perfectly creating their world and themselves in that world within it. And it brought about the question for them of, are we real, or are we one of these perfect simulations that Avex has
How
made?
do you define real?
Right. And so the way that they got out of this, or quantified what was the reality and what was the simulation, was they brought in a war mind, theorizing that a Vex cannot simulate a war mind because it's too complex.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, the only other thing they could have done is brought in something with the light.
but they wouldn't have known at that point
right.
that would have had that effect. But
exactly.
So they used a war mind, presumably Rasputin, to determine. I suppose Rasputin, or maybe this is where the war mind from the Spire
from Spire
came into play.
Because that's where Maya Sundaresh was working on. Oh my God!
That would make sense, yeah.
Fucking connection. Ah!
So they bring in this war mind to determine what's the what's the simulated copy of themselves and which one is the true Maya and Chioma and whatnot. And so they end up with 227 rescued, quote unquote, simulated versions of themselves.
Holy shit.
And then their real, quote unquote, real selves. And to distinguish between the various different copies, they're just numbered. So M Sun 1, M Sun 2, M Sun 3, all the way down to 227.
That's fucking crazy. That's fucking crazy. And again, because of the whole quantum thing and the simulations and all that shit, all that simulations can also happen inside the Vault of Glass, which is where Praedyth was also talking to those simulations and looking at those simulations, trying to send the signal out. Holy shit, dude. We just connected like 40 different points, I feel like.
Well, and the thing is, they only rescued 227. There's nothing that says that was all of the copies that were still stuck in the Vex network. And maybe the version of Maya Sundaresh that is interrogating Clovis for information is one of the copies they weren't able to rescue.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. We just connected like... Dude, I'm feeling pretty goddamn good right now. I'm not gonna lie. I feel really good right now. Yes. We did it. We did it, Myth. We connected. Yay!
So I guess that was a lot of information in a lot of different places to attempt to streamline it here. Clovis was infiltrated by the Vex. The Vex had a digital version of a scientist that they knew Clovis had interacted with previously, Maya Sundaresh. They used that digital version. They essentially gave Clovis hallucinations of this person, of Maya, this digital Maya, to infiltrate his stronghold, and then she and the Vex network were able to spread throughout and gain access to some of his secrets. One of those secrets that they were most interested in being clarity control. There's a couple of reasons they might have been interested in that. The Soul Divisive has the Heart of the Black Garden, which they, as we mentioned before, they worship rather than convert because they can't.
Because it's paracausal.
Because it's paracausal, but that is seen as an irregularity. Like that is seen as to the Vex, that is an error. That is a group of themselves that is not functioning properly.
Like it's almost like they don't see them as Vex anymore.
Yeah, they almost see them as another entity altogether.
Yep.
And it could be that they're trying to find understanding for the Black Heart through clarity control. They're like, oh, well, here's one that we can study, and then we'll understand this error and maybe try and correct it.
I like that theory.
Or they also were maybe a part of the Soul Divisive was responsible for this infiltration in the first place, and they were trying to gain access to more things like the Heart of the Black Garden.
Because I like that too.
So there's a couple different reasons why they may have done this, but they that's what this Maya Sundaresh is. She is a digital hallucination of Clovis for the purpose of infiltration and infection.
Good God. Good God. Whew.
Yeah. For anyone that's played the Cyberpunk game,
Oh, shit.
it's kind of like what's his name, Johnny Silverhands, where only the main character can see him because he's lives as a digital copy in their head. Same exact kind of thing.
But what is real? Or the clothes you're wearing? You think that's air you're breathing? How do you define real? Yeah. Yeah.
So,
oh man.
Yeah. There's a lot of info in that one.
It is
a lot of connections.
It is.
And I think that rather than overload everybody even more, this will be a good place to stop for the night.
I was gonna ask if that's where you wanted to end it, because that was these. God, I absolutely love this entry because of everything in it. It connects so many little tiny threads so subtly that if you had no idea who Maya Sundaresh was, if you had no idea what the whole deal with the soul divisive was, if you had, I mean, there's so many little threads here to like pull on and tug on, and again, even the entry right before it too, the Elsie upload, like not knowing that she built the ship, the ion drives, the work on the World Line Zero, like her time travel shit, like there's, oh God, this was a good one. This was a good one.
Yeah.
All right.
This was a good one. And it was fun to play out a Destiny scene as kind of a horror film.
It's so freaky, man. All right. Well, then let's jump to shout outs then. We got any?
So no specific shout outs tonight. Which is fine. We have had some new followers on Twitter and whatnot. So, thank you for being interested enough to follow us there and keep up to date with our episodes.
Absolutely.
Say we did think it would be kind of fun to do some shout outs, not necessarily of people that have left reviews or anything like that this time around, but to do shout outs of some people that have supported us from our clan. So
yeah.
Is there anyone
I've got a few
in particular?
Yeah. I'm gonna start naming people, no particular order. I've got our clan roster pulled up, and I'm remembering people who have specifically said, "Hey, I went through and listened to some of your stuff, and holy shit, this is awesome." So Wolf, Ronick, let's see, Light, Seraph, obviously our old producer, Eclipse, who I think is still our producer in spirit.
He always will be.
Of course, Scotty and Tia Italiano. That's all I've got here that I can think of. This one's a hard one. EFFZEH8. F8. F8. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I know he's listened to several episodes and liked them. Keyston, Stinky, Little Stinky, Slice McStriker, who also, quick cross shout out. He streams Destiny. I want to say he does it on the weekends, but he usually does some trials runs and stuff like that. He's very, very PvP oriented, but he does still listen to us, and every once in a while we can get him dragged into a raid, and he has fun in there. Look through the list here more. I think Captain Packin, I believe he's listened to a few and he's liked them. Eggs, I know he's listened to a bunch and liked them. And I'm sure there's more that I'm missing here. Kotick, Elite Brothers, Tension. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all of them that have listened to some of our stuff. Crafty's probably listened to a few. So yeah, again, Alpha Shepherd, can't forget you. Yeah, all of you guys that are in the clan, that have listened to one or more of our episodes. I know a bunch of you guys have enjoyed it, and obviously we love playing with you guys, and you guys are the best. So thank you.
Yeah, say it's always great to get support from those that we connect with for the first time through these podcast episodes. But yeah, we also want to just say thanks to those that have been keeping us going since before we were even really doing this. So there we go.
Since the old PSN recording days.
Yep, where they were telling us to get off group chat.
And of course, thank you, Myth, for doing this with me. Like this I as much as I know, I'm pretty sure I always credit Scotty with this, but of course, Benny, he'll come in and he'll be like, "Oh, I came up with that idea." But I think Scotty was the first one to say, "Hey, y'all should record this shit and put it down there." And so I'm glad that he had us do that, and we've had as much fun with it as we have, as we've had in the last year. So
absolutely.
Well, do you got any other any shout outs of your own? Well, I know we don't have any official shout outs, but I didn't know if you had any.
No, say last thing I would say is just if you're interested in leaving us if you want to leave us a review on your platform of choice, that we always go through those. Otherwise, you can find updates from us or drop a comment through our Twitter, which is at Myths and Stories, with a Z instead of an S. For as long as Twitter is still around, at least. So you can catch us there too.
Going. Ain't caught on fire yet.
Not yet.
Well, I guess I got to give a special thank you. Thank you, George, for creating Exo Pooping. We know it's a shitty job, but somebody had to do it.
Yeah.
you knew as soon as I named him, you knew, like at that moment that I named him, you knew, you're like, he's gonna think him at the end of the episode, isn't he? He's gonna do it. And nope. As soon as I name something in the episode, that's who gets thanked. So that's a thing now. But yeah, thanks, George, for making Exos poop. Anything else, Smith?
No.
Alrighty. Well, then, from all of us lore daddies to all of you guardians out there, we'll see you next time.